It is, thank you very much, Mark. We will have the next race already getting underway. This is another 40-minute race, pit stop race as well, of course, for the Gold Arts Magnificent Sevens and the Viren Builders Open Series, but only the sevens, sort of the only 7 variants in the Viren Builders Open Series. So, starting on pole position, car number 51, Christian Pittard. He lines up alongside car number 98, John Cutmore, 51 and 98 on row 1. Row 2 is Colin Watson. He's got Jeremy Adams alongside, and row 3 is made up of Tim Ralph and Stephen Collins. Row 4, Richard Carter has got Luke Charoux for company, and then on to row 5, we've got William Redman and Tim Davis rounding out your top 10 starters. Then it's John Bryant and Charlie Morgan on row 6. Row 7 is Trevor Harbour and Bruce Wilson. And heading on to row 8, you've got Martin Leadbeater and James Randall, who will hand over to Stephen Spicer at the midpoint of the race. Martin Dolan lines up alongside Nigel Liddell on row 9, and on row 10 of the grid you've got Simon Parker alongside James Melody, rounding out your 20-strong car field. And this is where we see some very, very quick lap times throughout this weekend. There's some fabulously developed cars out there on circuit at the moment, and they produce all kind of different power outputs. They're all split into various different classes to match that. But of course, as soon as you mix Gold Arts Mag 7s and Open Series, you end up with all kinds of battles out there as well. So who will get the best start from the front row? Will it be John Cutmore in the supercharged Spire RB7? Obviously motorbike engined, it will rev very quickly. He might get a good start here. On car number 51, Christian Pittard in his 2.2 litre Caterham 7. So the red lights are on. We'll keep an eye on the front row. It's all orange for Christian Pittard, silver and orange for John Cutmore. The lights go out, and it's initially John Cutmore, but Christian Pittard immediately gets the car spooled up and dives his way back into the lead by the time we arrive at turn 1. So it's Christian Pittard from John Cutmore. Further back then, it's Colin Watson, who's dropped in behind and now back in front of Jeremy Adams. Those two were swapping away on the run up towards Druids Corner, but it's Christian Pittard from John Cutmore. Then it's Colin Watson, followed by the yellow of Jeremy Adams. Behind Jeremy Adams, I think that's Tim Ralph that has worked his way up a place or two in the early stages of the race, or is that even Luke Charoux? We'll wait and see as they come back through and past us. This is the number 69 machine of Stephen Collins that's picked up a place and is already starting to apply the pressure on towards Jeremy Adams. So Christian Pittard leads from John Cutmore. Then it is going to be Colin Watson and Jeremy Adams. Jeremy Adams under big pressure from Stephen Collins. We've already worked our way through and effectively through one full lap of the Indy circuit. It's such a quick lap in these cars. Back over the line goes Christian Pittard, followed by John Cutmore. And then it is going to be Colin Watson, Jeremy Adams, and further back there's some big battles going on. There's lots of swapping, chopping and changing. Tim Davis, we thought he qualified out of position. 6 places gained on the opening lap alone, so he's gone right the way up into 4th place, and the safety car has been deployed, and the exact reason for that, at least to my eye, is still unknown. We have a look on the cameras and we still can't see anything, so I don't know whether we've had maybe a wheel arch that's parted ways with the car, or with a car, and has deposited itself in the middle of the circuit. But exactly the cause, we've lost 4 cars, or 3 cars. Yeah, so we've got 1 car up at Druids, which is just outside of our camera shot. So that explains one. That's Luke Charoux in the number 27 machine that's found himself in the gravel up at Druids. There may be another couple up there, because we have still lost the number 6 car of Tim Ralph, who started in 5th place, and we've also lost the number 89 machine, that being Bruce Wilson. They all started at very different points of the circuit. Tim Ralph started 5th, Luke Charoux started 8th, and Bruce Wilson started 14th. So all very different parts of the grid, but they've all gone missing on this opening lap, and I can only imagine it will be up at Druids Corner. We can't see too much from the camera. If we could get it rotated very slightly to the right, we'd be able to see if we've got more than just the 1 car up there. But Christian Pittard, good opening lap, almost left vulnerable to John Cutmore. But then through all of that, Jeremy Adams was there or thereabouts, but the big move has to be Tim Davis from 10th on the grid right the way up to 5th on that opening lap. Jeremy Adams was under some big pressure from Stephen Collins as well, that number 69 machine. I've got a feeling there's still going to be a bit more to come from Stephen Collins. As we have a look down the order, there's been a lot of changing on that opening lap, hasn't there? And it's no longer 2 cars or 3 cars that were missing. I think it's just the 2. But even still, whereabouts is Bruce Wilson?
Yeah, it begs the question, doesn't it? You know, we just can't see from where we are. You'd think from our elevated position we'd be able to see everything on the Indy circuit, but no, there's a few bits you can't see, whether it be because of trees on the run up towards Druids, whether it be because of spectator banking on the exit of Druids, whether it be because of air conditioning units that are behind us on the roof section down on the Cooper Straight. There's a few bits we simply can't see from our commentary box, and when we can't see them, we're reliant on the either, if you're watching the live stream pictures, or we're reliant on the CCTV cameras that the circuit have, and we can't control those. We get the image and we can't do anything other than zoom in or out. We can't pan right or pan left. So some areas still remain a bit unknown for us in this one. Yeah, the other two cars that were delayed as well, I think it might just be transponder issues with those two cars, because they've both slotted themselves back in higher up the order now. So I think it is just one car that's missing. Is Bruce Wilson there? Let's have a quick look. Maybe his car didn't start, possibly.
I'm looking as well, John Bryant, whereabouts? He's climbed up 3 places from where he started, so he's had a good start.
Yeah, I think Colin Watson and Tim Ralph are transponder issues.
Yes, looking at that, and Luke Giroux may have just deposited his car in the gravel on his own,
because Bruce Wilson, who was showing on the timing screen, has now entirely disappeared from the timing screen, which suggested he didn't make the start.
Yeah, that makes sense. So whether he got to Parc Fermé or the assembly area and then no further is yet to be revealed. I can still see a few mechanics, I think, towards the top of the pit lane, so that may be at least an answer to that one. The safety car is peeling the field down in towards Graham Hill Bend. I'm having a look for any damage, and go on, Mark.
No, just saying that we're, quick time check, we're coming up to 8 minutes to 12 o'clock, so we will have our first live music taking place, no longer on the village green outside, it will be now in the Kentagon. So if you want some live music, head to the Kentagon, because Kiri Layton is performing a set at 12 o'clock in the Kentagon, and then the other live music that we've got here for you at Barnds Brittania will be Livy Wollaston, who will get going at 2 o'clock. Lights are off on the safety car. We're about to get racing once more.
We are once again. So Christian Pittard, he will have to nail the start like he did at the start of this race, and Damien Hirst in the BMW safety car will be thinking, I've only just turned the lights off, leave me alone for a minute, because Christian Pittard, so desperate to get this race back underway, immediately punches the throttle out of the final corner. John Cutmore gives chase, and Jeremy Adams isn't in second place. It is that number 92 of Colin Watson, who is already trying to apply that pressure onto the cars up the road. Also in there is Stephen Collins, so he's 5 for the lead, and they were all being nice and patient not to overtake before they got to the start-finish line, but 5 cars all scrapping over the lead, and there's more yet to come.
Yeah, I'm surprised that the man from Orpington, Tim Davis, isn't a little bit higher up as well. He qualified only 10th quickest at the wheel of the number 80 car. He's now starting to try and make a bit of progress at the wheel of his black and day-glow orange Boss Racing car. He's going to draw himself alongside Stephen Collins. He gets in front and goes through on the run down in towards Graham Hill Bend, but then leads a couple of huge tyre tracks on the way out as he punches the accelerator, and the tail end of the caterham reminds him that there's only so much you can do on the accelerator before the tyres give up.
Apparently that's the way to do it, because he's only got in front of Jeremy Adams by the other end of the Cooper Straight. So Tim Davis absolutely flying. He's now onto the coattails of John Cutmore for 3rd place, because we have seen that change. Colin Watson up into 2nd.
I wouldn't have thought. He's got a radio that's tuned into 88.3 FM, Radio Brands in his caterham, but as soon as I mentioned that he wasn't doing as well as I thought, there we go, 2 places picked up, and now he'll be looking for another place if he can, because he's now right on the heels of the Spire RB7 in the hands of John Cutmore, who's done a good chunk of racing in the Gold Arts Magnificent Sevens and Viren Builders Open Series over the years. The Gold Arts Magnificent Sevens caters for any Lotus 7 inspired design, so it's not just caterhams, it is the likes of Spires, Westfield, Dax, low costs, all of those things are all eligible to run in the Mag 7s.
It's a shame there's only the one of the Spires, because I swear there used to be a couple of those that used to run quite potently as well. Yeah. And there was the 98 of John Cutmore, and then I think there was a 97 which had a sort of Dayglow yellow flashes compared to Dayglow orange on John Cutmore's car. Back over the line comes Christian Pittard. Still giving chase is Colin Watson, but not quite as close as I'm sure he would like to be. Fastest lap of the race goes the way of Christian Pittard with a 49.607. And Colin Watson, whilst he jumbles down on the timing screen, manually he'll be placed up to the top into 2nd place. John Cutmore and Tim Davis still sat there nose to tail, and Tim Davis has a little look at pricing the door open on the run through Druids. It doesn't quite work for him, but all of that battling that they're doing, it's dropping them away from the top 2. So even if Tim Davis does get through and past John Cutmore, he's got a lot more work to try and do. And Jeremy Adams, he's not running quite as quick as you'd expect either, because they now have Tim Ralph for company.
David Watson was the other driver that used to race the Spire, but we haven't seen much of him this year. Yeah, so Tim Davis really applying the pressure to the sole Spire we've got in the field. John Cutmore, who qualified 2nd quickest, is running 3rd, but might drop to 4th if he's not careful, as they squeeze their way through and past a little bit of traffic, which I think was James Melody's car, wasn't it, that they placed the lap on. The race leader, Christian Pittard, trying to sprint away, but Colin Watson's having none of it. And now on the run up towards Druids, Tim Davis gets a good run on John Cutmore, but again, can't quite make his way through, I'm afraid. So he's just going to have to bide his time for the moment and see whether he can just prize a little gap somewhere else around the lap.
Yeah, he's got to try and work that move as best as possible, and an issue, unfortunately, for the number 97 machine. I think
92.
That's 92,
Colin
pardon
Watson.
me. So Colin Watson from second place with an issue, peeling that car straight in towards the paddock area. So all of a sudden, the battle between Davis and Cutmore, it's for second place, isn't it?
It is, yeah, now for second and for third position. New fastest lap of the race for Colin Watson just before he retired. And that is now matched by exactly the same time of Christian Pittard. And so they have both done
Twice
a
in one day.
49.293 second lap. That's twice, yeah. Twice today we've had exactly the same fastest lap time coming on the same lap from two different people.
Yeah, never seen it before, but
bit like buses.
yeah.
Wait for one, two come along.
Yeah, twice today, and they both set purple times, and they both display as purple times as well. Christian Pittard is now afforded a bit more time to carve his way through the traffic. He doesn't need to be so aggressive with Colin Watson no longer behind him. But John Cutmore, he's soaking up all of this pressure. But for how long can he do so? Because at the moment, Tim Davis, you can tell he's on a mission.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, so he qualified a little bit out of position, did Tim Davis. It is his local circuit. He resides just up the road at Orpington, so not quite on the doorstep, you know, like some of the drivers that we have from West Kingsdown that race with us, but pretty much a stone's throw away. Now he fires one up the inside of John Cutmore going in towards Paddock Hill Bend, up the inside. Can he maintain it on the exit of the corner? Yes, he can. Tim Davis picks up second place now. John Cutmore in the Spire drops down into third position, and we are about to have the pit window open in this 40-minute race. Pit window is now open. First 10 minutes of the race have expired.
Yeah, we've got only a couple of driver changes really to deal with. James Randall's hand over to Stephen Spicer, Martin Dolan's hand over to Gary Boone, and Simon Parker's hand over to Neil. How are you going to go for that surname?
Which one, sorry?
Car number 90.
Neil McConaughey.
Neil McConaughey is yet to take over the wheel of that car. Christian Pittard again, and now obviously Tim Davis in front of John Cutmore on the run over the start-finish line. It looks like John Cutmore maybe slightly quicker in a straight line and a bit later on the brakes, and Tim Davis is just going to chop across the nose and pretty much show to John Cutmore he's not going to give that position up easily. But now with Christian Pittard with quite a substantial lead, he does have that time to pick his way through traffic quite carefully.
Yeah, and even more so because, of course, the car that's there in second place now, Tim Davis, does have an extra times penalty to spend in the pits. He's got an extra 20 seconds to spend in the pits compared to anybody else that is out there, such has been his success so far this season. So along the Cooper Straight, up towards Surtees and then McLaren go that squabbling pair. Down towards Graham Hill Bend goes car number 199, Nigel Liddell, who is trying to see if he can get fully up onto terms with the number 75 car that lies just ahead of him, which is the car that is started by James Randall. Our race leader in the meantime, though, is now completing lap number 11, is on to lap number 12.
So, again, John Cutmore is trying to work his way through and past Tim Davis. We've not had any pit callers as of yet. We'll wait and see as to who will be the first to blink and dive into the pit lane. We've still got 28 minutes of this race remaining, but Christian Pittard last time through, his lead 4.7 seconds. Tim Davis is only, a couple of tenths in front of John Cutmore. Jeremy Adams as well, he's doing what he can to manage what's left of that mid-pack, because he does have the number 9 or the number 6 machine of Tim Ralph sat behind him. Behind Tim Ralph is Stephen Collins. That's a tight little battle pack for the final couple of spots inside the top 5.
Now, for this year, usually the Mag 7s have sprint races. They don't have pit stop races, whereas the Viren Builders are the 40-minute races with the pit stop. So I'm assuming the pit regulations are the same for both, that it's, again, a minimum of 1 minute and 30 seconds from pit in to pit out. And if you are on your own, you don't even have to get out of the car and back in or anything if it's a caterham 7. They're not the easiest things to get in or out of. You just leave the engine running, 90 seconds later, you carry on again.
Yeah, absolutely. That would make sense, wouldn't it? And I guess we've adopted that one rather than the sprint purely. I don't know, I was expecting, the Viren Builders to have more cars, but it is the Mag 7s that have come out in full force. And normally we're seeing Tim Ralph and John Cutmore maybe slightly further up. John Cutmore obviously sat there in third place, Tim Ralph down in 5th. Normally they're battling away. Go on.
No. I was just looking. Has John Cutmore fallen away a bit more this lap from Tim Davis? Yeah, it looks as though he has. New fastest lap of the race for Christian Pittard, 49.282 from him that time through. So stretches the lead advantage up to 4.4 seconds between himself and Tim Davis. John Cutmore still there in third.
He is indeed. John Cutmore, he sounded quite rattly as he came over the start-finish line almost, but he's still clearly out there and circulating and closing the gap a little bit on the first part of this lap, I think, up to Tim Davis. Christian Pittard being super aggressive through traffic, just making sure that he can find his way through. There's a good battle going on a little bit further down the order, isn't there?
Yeah, it's just going around through Druids at the moment. That is Trevor Harbour at the wheel of number 70, under pressure from Charlie Morgan that sits behind the red car with the white stripes right the way down the centre of it and the white rollover hoop. So they are fighting away for 10th and 11th places as things currently stand. Nothing to choose between the pair of them. They head down towards the bottom section of the Cooper Straight, and Trevor Harbour is just about doing enough, I would say, to keep Charlie Morgan's aspirations at bay. And the good fight behind them is going to be Jeremy Adams, still fighting away with Tim Ralph. They'll be coming up to lap those two that are having their own good squabble before too much longer. So here over the start-finish line comes the yellow car, which is Jeremy Adams. Really very much under pressure from Tim Ralph at the wheel of the blue machine with the orange stripe down the centre. They squeeze up the inside of Charlie Morgan, or at least one does on the way in towards Paddock Hill Bend. Tim Ralph does it on the way out of Paddock Hill Bend. He gets a much better run up towards Druids. Can he nip up the inside of Jeremy Adams? No, Jeremy just gets the door closed in time, but they've dealt with one back marker. They've now got another one to deal with, and that'll be the number 70 car of Trevor Harbour.
Yeah, and if they continue to battle, not too far away behind them is Stephen Collins in that silver, black and yellow roll-caged machine. So he's getting closer as well. If they continue to battle the way they are and be careful through traffic. And now we see the change. Jeremy Adams has fallen in behind Tim Ralph. Tim Ralph later on the brakes dived his way up the inside on the run through Surtees, so that's the change there. Stephen Collins will be watching that unfold in front of him and will want a piece of the pie. Unfortunately, Simon Parker's jumping out to hand over to his teammate. Back over the line, we get that little trio. Next time he comes through, have a look at the front of Stephen Collins' car. I've got a feeling he's been off the road.
Yeah, we'll have a look at that next time through. Yeah, so Neil McConaughey is jumping in to the car that's being vacated by Simon Parker. Our race leader about to come through and conclude another lap. For Tim Davis in second place, he's bottled up behind a back marker at the moment, and that's dropping him back into the clutches once more of John Cutmore. So only now can he squeeze his way through and past William Redmond's car, I think it was, but instantly you can see just how much time he lost there through the traffic. John Cutmore up the inside going in towards Paddock Hill Bend, seizes the opportunity, takes the place away, but on the exit of the corner, Tim Davis is going to try and fight back. He's on the outside line up towards Druids. If he can stick with it on the outside line and get the inside line down for the next corner, which is Graham Hill Bend, but he can't quite do it. John Cutmore goes through, and that was all to do with just that slight delay through the back marker, wasn't it, for Tim Davis?
I'm starting to think as well, Christian Pittard's lead is evaporating very slightly. It looks like they're starting to reel him in. Unfortunately, I missed over the line Stephen Collins again, looking into the front of that car. It looks rather grassy, so I'm guessing he's had a small off-track excursion, and that's what dropped him away from that battle initially. Neil McConaughey gets back going again, and that car can head out onto circuits, but John Cutmore, having made that move, he's built up a bit of a margin already, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. So he has pulled away to the tune of nearly 9/10 of a second from the man who's just taken second place away from Tim Davis. So they head up towards Druids now. You were saying the race lead is evaporating. Yeah, it is a little bit. John Cutmore was 0.2 of a second quicker than Christian Pittard.
And that was with
lap.
an overtake as
well. And that was with an overtake, yeah. So you're absolutely right. Someone else destined for the pit lane at the end of this lap, and that looks as though that is one of the Boss Racing cars that is coming in towards the pit lane. James Melody heads into the pit lane for his mandatory pit stop, car number 95.
Yeah, Stephen Collins has definitely been off the road. I don't just think it's in the sort of main air intake at the front. I think some of the suspension components. Christian Pittard into the pit lane as well. So too is Tim Davis. So the top two in theory, or two of the top three into the pit lane. John Cutmore continues over the line and will inherit the lead of the race. But definitely, yes, Stephen Collins has been off the road. Some of the suspension components have taken chunks out of the grass as well. But now what are they going to do? Christian Pittard and Tim Davis are sort of looking at each other as if to go, no, you go.
Martin Ledbetter is in, as is Richard Carter into the pit lane as well. So we've got 5 cars sitting there in the pit lane, and Tim Ralph, I think, is coming in as well. So the number 6 car, I think I just saw enter pit lane, and as he comes through now, does he show in pit lane? Yes, he does. Yeah, well, he's not showing in pit lane because his transponder isn't working, but it is him.
Also, I think Stephen Collins, it looks worse than it is because the grille on his car is yellow. So maybe that is what it is that's fooling me very slightly. But Tim Davis just chatting to the mechanics and they're doing pressures as well. And that was the perfect time to do it. Make sure that the pressures are all okay. You've spotted something. Yeah,
he was having a conversation with the mechanic, and the mechanic then started to run back towards the garage, which does suggest that maybe Tim isn't entirely happy with the way that the car is handling, and they might just try and tweak something on it. Well, is the mechanic wandering back in that general direction? There's another conversation going on. But no, he still remains there with not a great deal of work happening on any of the cars. Subtle adjustment of tyre pressures, but that's about it.
Yeah, and they've got an entire Barnds Hatch pit lane to use, and we've still got Richard Carter having to be pulled back to make sure he can return to the circuit. Back out onto circuit now will go Richard Pittard, and Jeremy Adams is into the pit lane as well. So Jeremy Adams into the pit lane. Christian Pittard returns to the circuit. John Cutmore remains out and flies his way through traffic. It's scary quick, that, isn't it?
It is, yeah. He leads the race, of course, now. And has just set the fastest lap of the race, John Cutmore. The number 98 car leading the way, as yet to pit, but a 49.116 second lap from John Cutmore. That's impressive stuff. Up to second now, but still as yet to pit, has now come number 69, that is up into second place, which is Stephen Collins. And third at the moment, if he doesn't pit, might be William Redman at the end of this lap if he doesn't pit. In fact, yes, he is. Car number 241, William Redman, is now up into third position.
Yeah, and everybody else diving into the pit lane, one of those being Stephen Collins. He comes into the pit lane as well. Also diving into the pit lane is John Bryant, so he's come in. We've also got, who else have we had?
Martin Dolan is in tandem with Gary Boone.
So that's another...
and John Bryant is in at the wheel of the pink machine.
Yes,
John, who is a regular photographer here at Barnds Hatch, does all of the photographs for Caterham Motorsport as well. We've seen him race before, but he's at the wheel of the car that we've seen Roger Patke compete in the Caterham Championships this year. So John dusting off the overalls and the crash helmet and no longer behind the barriers taking photographs is what's going on. He's out there enjoying himself.
You can't miss that car in a hurry either, can you? Christian Pittard, having returned to the circuit, carving his way through traffic as quickly as possible. He's just gone through and past Richard Carter. And what's happened to Tim Davis?
He's retired on the exit of Graham Hill Bend, I'm afraid. The second of the Boss Racing cars retired. So we saw Colin Watson retire earlier on. The number 80 car of Tim Davis now out of the race, I'm afraid.
That's the car you spotted the mechanic running away for, isn't it? Just to go and have a look at something. And yeah, came back, sent him away, got the all clear. And unfortunately, it's all come to a head, and I've got to say all of the pit stops so far have all been the right side of 90 seconds as well.
They have, yeah, so nobody has done it any shorter than they ought to have done. John Cutmore back over the start-finish line, continuing to lead the way. Another car dives for the pit lane this time through, which is Stephen Collins, is it, that's just come into the pit lane this time through?
I think he's returning to the circuit now. We've got somebody coming in now, so Stephen Collins rumbling his way back down the pit lane. Who is it that we've had come in? Because we've got so many cars
in. Number 199, I think it is Nigel Liddell, because it's a black car, isn't it?
Yeah, in the Caterham Classic. So he is coming down the pit lane now. Back over the line, we've got Jeremy Adams. He's still fighting away with Tim Ralph. It's great to see, even post-pit stops, Jeremy Adams. Are they a lap apart? I think they are, yes. So Tim Ralph has not come into the pit lane, but he's fighting with Jeremy Adams, who has been in.
No, he did come into the pit lane. The transponder didn't work.
Right, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but he's lost a raft of time, hasn't he?
Yes. Yes.
But we don't know how long he was in the pit lane, because...
So that's where, yeah, Tim Ralph was pulling away from Jeremy Adams quite substantially.
Yeah, the transponder didn't work, so they've missed the lap. They've now put him back in, and they are fighting for position. So it's just Tim Ralph's transponder being troublesome. So that is a fight for position, and that is the blue car just heading round through Clearways now and up towards Clark Curve. The yellow machine that sits behind him is Tim Ralph, and they are fighting for what will be 6th and 7th places overall.
Yeah, and John Cutmore into the pit lane. He's parked at quite an acute angle, more to, I think, fire his way back onto the active lane of the pit lane, and struggling their way through traffic is Tim Ralph. Tim Ralph can see Jeremy Adams behind him getting closer and closer. John Cutmore will want to get out as soon as possible, as he will have just probably heard Christian Pittard go flying over the start-finish line and onto another lap of the race. And of course, we've seen that change. Stephen Collins was previously behind not only Tim Ralph, but also Jeremy Adams. Since the pit lane, Stephen Collins is in front of Tim Ralph and in front of Jeremy Adams. So that has all changed, all in the space of one pit stop. John Cutmore is still there. Whereabouts is Christian Pittard? He's just coming out of Graham Hill Bend. So in a few moments' time, we will get an idea when John Cutmore starts rolling. Will Christian Pittard remain in the lead of the race, or will it be John Cutmore? It's going to be tight, but I think John Cutmore, with those fast laps he posted whilst Christian Pittard was in the pit lane, it's enough to take the lead.
Let's have a quick look. So he heads down towards pit lane exit and accelerates his way now, breaks the beam, and that was 1 minute and 31 seconds he was in the pit lane area. So that is pretty much the ideal pit stop for Christian Pittard. He was in the pit lane for 1 minute and 33 seconds. So the quick laps from John Cutmore, plus being 2 seconds quicker in the pits, that's why we've now got that change.
Yeah, absolutely. And Christian Pittard, he's got plenty of driving to do. Jeremy Adams is still playing chase, really. He wants to get onto the tail of Tim Ralph, which visually you can see him trying to do, but also Tim Ralph is trying to do the same for Stephen Collins. And Stephen Collins is only a little bit further up the road. He's not that far, but with 16.5 seconds to go, there's still plenty of time for the race to come back to him.
16.5 minutes to go. So number 98, John Cutmore, leads the way by 5 seconds from number 51, Christian Pittard, in second place. Third place is 69, which is going to be the car of Stephen Collins. Fourth place at the moment is number 6, Tim Ralph. Fifth place is number 3, which is Jeremy Adams. And completing the top 6, it's the light green and black car, which is number 42, Richard Carter. So that's the order of the top 6 as things stand. The best of the squabbles that we've got is just going through Graham Hill Bend, I would say, at the moment, which is Tim Ralph slowly at the wheel of the blue car, starting to pull away from the yellow machine, number 3 of Jeremy Adams, that sits behind.
Yeah, and looking at it, Jeremy Adams having fallen away from the car of Tim Ralph. I think that's because Tim Ralph is actually closing in very slightly on Stephen Collins. Stephen Collins is picking his way through traffic as quickly as possible, but regardless of that, Tim Ralph is still closing that margin. Over the line goes John Cutmore, then goes Christian Pittard. The gap, 1.7 seconds. Christian Pittard with the fastest lap of the race of 48.791.
So he's coming back at him now, John Cutmore, with work to do as well. There's plenty of traffic that he's going to meet before too much longer, because it's a busy section of the circuit up at Druitt and down in towards Graham Hill Bend, and he can't really afford to be compromised because he knows that he is going to come under pressure from the lead of the race. He works his way past the first of those cars, which I think is William Redman on the exit of Graham Hill Bend. Might pick off another one before they get up towards Surtees and McLaren. The next guy is going to want to try and dive his way through will be number 73, Charlie Morgan. Christian Pittard also now having to deal with the first of those little bits of traffic, which is the number 241 car, the white car with the red flashes in the hands of William Redman. So over the start-finish line, John Cutmore picks off another one of the back markers, which is Nigel Liddell's car. He can't, however, get past the next of the little bits of traffic, which is going to be Jeremy Adams, until the exit of Paddock Hill Bend. So the lead advantage, 2.3 seconds. So it's come back out. That was because it was a better lap from John Cutmore on that lap than it was from Christian Pittard. So the gap is now coming back out again. We've also had, as we say, that confirmation of that change of position, Tim Ralph pulling away from Jeremy Adams, but also we need to keep an eye on Tim Ralph closing in onto the coattails of the number 69 car of Stephen Collins, because third, fourth and fifth, there's not much between them all.
No, we saw those three fighting away prior to the pit stops. Post pit stops, it seems to have opened up just a little bit, but for Stephen Collins, he will see the blue machine slowly working its way closer and closer of Tim Ralph. Tim Ralph will see Jeremy Adams in his rearview mirror, knowing full well any small mistake will cost him dear, and we may see that change of position before the end of this race. 13.5 minutes still to go, and with Tim Ralph and actually John Cutmore as well, actually I'd say John Cutmore is starting to be closed down now by Christian Pittard. The battles we've been watching, Mark, have all of a sudden got the leaders in there, and in doing that, Tim Ralph has massively closed in onto the coattails of Stephen Collins, and Jeremy Adams is starting to close back in onto the tail of Tim Ralph. Tim Ralph is closing in on Stephen Collins. Stephen Collins has just been passed by John Cutmore. There's so much going on. We've got battles in the lead battle at the moment. So John Cutmore comes through and over the line to tick another lap in the book. And now we're going to see the change. Tim Ralph looks to the outside of Stephen Collins on the run towards turn one. Position made before they even get to the braking area. So Tim Ralph, pardon me, up into what will be fourth place now, or will that even be third? That will be third place. So Tim Ralph up onto the podium provisionally, and that drops Stephen Collins down into fourth. Tim Ralph will try and maintain that third till the end of the race. Jeremy Adams will see those cars up the road and want a part of that one. John Cutmore has pulled out a bit more of a margin between himself and Christian Pittard. The gap's up to, what, 2.7 seconds now, with a slightly slower lap from John Cutmore. If anything, it's come down very slightly, but with traffic slowly starting to clear up the road, we can expect some quick laps, not only from John Cutmore, but also from Christian Pittard. Back over the line goes John Cutmore and posts a 49.690. However, Christian Pittard betters it with a 49.574, so 2.5, best part of 2.6 seconds separates them. So the gap continues to come down. 11 3/4 minutes of this Gold Arts Magnificent Sevens and Viren Builders Open Series race remains. As we have a look down towards Graham Hill Bend, John Cutmore fires his way through. Then it's Christian Pittard, nothing between them. Tim Ralph is giving chase, having just got past Stephen Collins into his newly acquired third place, has massively built out a margin. And to my eye, Stephen Collins is potentially even falling back into the clutches of the yellow machine of Jeremy Adams, car number 3. But back towards the start-finish line comes the silver and day-glow orange Spire RB7 of John Cutmore. Then the pure orange car of Christian Pittard fires its way over the line and back in towards turn 1. Has the gap come down yet more? Yes, it has. Another 0.3 of a second. 2.3 seconds now separates John Cutmore from Christian Pittard, so they're really starting to close in. 2.333. Tim Ralph over the line in third place has pulled out the best part of 2 seconds over Stephen Collins. Jeremy Adams is only a couple of seconds back from there as well, so third, fourth and fifth very equidistantly spread. John Cutmore coming under yet more pressure from Christian Pittard, as it will be difficult to miss. And that number 51 Caterham 7 in his rearview mirror, pure orange all over that car, and 2.3 seconds this time. I've got a feeling it might come down yet more. We might be the right side of 2 full seconds now, or maybe even into the 1.9s. John Cutmore comes towards the line. He will see that Gary Boone in the number 7 machine just further up the road. John Cutmore over the line with his personal fastest lap of the race, a 48.884. Christian Pittard immediately responds with the overall fastest lap of the race, a 48.778. So a brilliant lap from Christian Pittard. That means that the lead margin is now down to, what, 2.2 seconds, continues to do so. Tim Ralph still continues on in third place, now the best part of 3 seconds ahead of Stephen Collins. Stephen Collins has lost 0.7 of a second to Jeremy Adams, so that means that fourth and fifth are getting closer together, the leaders are getting closer together, and Tim Ralph's that awkward bit in the middle and doesn't really know where to go. So we'll keep an eye on those top 2. Back towards the start-finish line comes John Cutmore and Christian Pittard. They're really starting to close in now. 2.2 seconds will come down yet more. A bit of traffic they managed to pick their way through and past. That's Nigel Liddell over the line. 1.3 seconds now, so 2.3 seconds turns to 1.3. 1 full second quicker was Christian Pittard. Over the line goes Tim Ralph, and visually you can see now Stephen Collins and Jeremy Adams absolutely together. Really good to see how close the pair of these two have got over the previous laps. We'll wait for Tim Ralph to be pushed back up to what would be third place. So we're seeing the battle for first and second, the battle for fourth and fifth really start to close in. Obviously, a massive thank you for TSL for being so quick on the edits, the live edits throughout this race. But Christian Pittard, he is closing in on John Cutmore. We've now only got 8 and a bit minutes to go, but now we've got a sort of puncher. That's a rather severe puncher, front left, I think, for the Dayglow Orange machine of Martin Ledbetter, and it looks like a puncher, or a brake's exploded, or even I think the wheel arch has dropped down onto the tyre almost.
Yeah, it's the wheel arch that's dropped down onto the tyre. It's failed, and it's not sort of broken away, has it?
No, normally you'd see something like that part ways with the car, but what has been going on? John Cutmore and Christian Pittard absolutely together now, 1.3 seconds, and that car hasn't been able to get away, so we may have a safety car on the way, dependent on what happens. But I've got a feeling with Martin Ledbetter in the Pro Compele Gold machine, where he is, we may need a safety car for that car. So we've seen Christian Pittard get closer to John Cutmore, now 1.3 seconds. Tim Ralph has got through and past Stephen Collins, and Stephen Collins has fallen into the clutches of Jeremy Adams, and they're only a couple of tenths apart. But now with Martin Ledbetter's car stationary on the grass, we could see a safety car, and all of that hard work could all come undone.
The one good thing is that it might be able to be pushed. In fact, Martin Ledbetter is moving it out of harm's way, and it will not mean a safety car because he's driven it out of where it had stopped. So John Cutmore and Christian Pittard can fight away as over the start-finish line. We've got that squabble that you were also talking about. Jeremy Adams drawing himself alongside Stephen Collins heading in towards Paddock Hill Bend, but can't complete the move. So Collins still leads Class E in 4th place, and Jeremy Adams is going to have another little nibble. So they're fighting over 4th and 5th, Jack, but they are fighting over the lead of the class, those two.
They are indeed, and it's nice to see them fighting this close. They were quite a way apart in the early stage of this race. A big look up the inside from Jeremy Adams. He got the car slowed down, and Stephen Collins will be feeling this pressure now. And as they work their way along the Cooper Straight towards Surtees, they remain nose to tail. What of the top two? John Cutmore and Christian Pittard now only 1.1 seconds apart, so he's really starting to close in there. Jeremy Adams slightly quicker in a straight line. Will he work his way through and past Stephen Collins this time? Dives his way to the inside. Stephen Collins on the outside. He'll have to brake later or try and find the momentum all the way around the outside, but no, Jeremy Adams later on the brakes dives his way up the inside. Not only takes 4th place, but takes the lead of Class E.
Yeah, certainly does. Now, could he pull away from Stephen Collins or not is the next little question that we need to ask. 6.5 minutes to go. The battle for the lead of the race is getting ever closer as well. 1.1 seconds was all that was separating John Cutmore from Christian Pittard last time through, but it's still the number 98 car of Cutmore that leads as they come over the start-finish line. The orange machine of Christian Pittard very much within touching distance, sets the new fastest lap of the race with a 48.594 from Christian Pittard. So he is now just 0.5 of a second shy of the race leader. Tim Ralph very much on his own in 3rd place, and then that's Stephen Collins and Jeremy Adams battle, or Jeremy Adams and Stephen Collins as it is now, fighting away still for the lead of Class E and what will be 4th and 5th places overall. But the leaders working their way through traffic heading along the Cooper Straight, and for John Cutmore, he really needs to clear this traffic as quickly, as efficiently as he possibly can, because Christian Pittard, with that new fastest lap of the race last time through, is on his way, and he can't quite clear William Redman in time, which means that Christian Pittard is going to have a better run coming onto the Brabham Straight this time through. Is he going to be able to pick up the toe from the race leader and pick up the lead of the race? Well, he's closing, ever closing, up towards Paddock Hill Bend, but he's not going to take the lead of the race, at least this time, heading in towards the right-hander.
No, 5.5 minutes to go. That means now that John Cutmore has got a big job on his hands to keep Christian Pittard behind him, but I don't think it's going to work for him, because Christian Pittard, not only throughout this race, but throughout the season so far, seems to have the upper hand, and he looks for the up and under. It didn't work for him. Going very defensive is John Cutmore. Can Christian Pittard get the car squared away on the exit and then fire towards Surtees in a straight line? It seems like the Spire RB7 has just enough in hand to remain in front of Christian Pittard. Christian Pittard is sat there in 2nd place and continuing to close down on John Cutmore. You can see he takes the much wider arc through the final corner just to try and give himself the best opportunity in a straight line on John Cutmore on the run towards turn 1. John Cutmore, is he going to place the car on the inside? Yes, he does, but Christian Pittard, again, not close enough to go for the move. With 4.5 minutes remaining, Mark, Christian Pittard, he's running out of opportunities, and I'm sure John Cutmore, this is going to be the longest 5 minutes of his life.
It really is, isn't it? Yeah, for John Cutmore, he needs to be really careful. We've got a car blocking somebody in, so if you are the owner of a Mini Cooper with a registration S1 SEL, that's Sierra 1 Sierra Echo Lima, it's blocking a car in Garage 8 that needs to get out of the way, please, if you could. So if you're the owner of a Mini Cooper S1 SEL, go back to your car, move it out of the way, you're blocking somebody in.
Great stuff, cheers Mark. And for the lead battle, it remains exactly as it was, absolutely nose to tail. The Spire RB7 of John Cutmore is just about quick enough in a straight line to not worry about Christian Pittard's Caterham 7 on the brakes in towards turn 1. Christian Pittard takes a couple of stabs at turning that car in, but they remain about a car length apart. But Christian Pittard on the brakes on the run up towards Druids. He has a look to the outside so much later on the brakes. Is he going to now look for the cutback? John Cutmore runs him out so wide just to make sure Christian cannot get that up and under on the run back down the hill towards Graham Hill Bend, and both of them sideways in eagerness to get on the throttle. 3 minutes remaining. This is going to go down to the wire, but Christian Pittard has a big look to the inside. That just about disrupts John Cutmore's turn in. He takes a bit of a a wider line. That compromises his exit, which will compromise the entry on towards the start-finish straight. But Christian Pittard is throwing absolutely everything at this.
Yeah, including the kitchen sink, but at the moment he's just coming up a little bit short. So over the start-finish line, is he going to have another go this time as they head towards Paddock Hill Bend? No, he takes a nice wide sweep into the corner. He'll try and cut back on the exit and get the undercut coming off, but John Cutmore should be wise to that, and I'm sure we'll cover it off on the run up towards the braking area for Druids. Yes, he does. So John Cutmore still manages to hang on to the lead of the race. It might be a small one. It's just a tenth of a second as they came over the start-finish line, but he is still leading the way from Christian Pittard in second place. He didn't exactly make friends with the apex there, though, coming down in towards Graham Hill Bend. He was a good, 3 or 4 feet away from the apex, so they still continue their little squabble. And now we also have that good fight going on for what will be third and fourth place heading through Paddock Hill Bend. Tim Ralph has been caught by a resurgent number 3, Jeremy Adams.
Yeah, Jeremy Adams completely got a second win now and has really started to close down onto Tim Ralph. John Cutmore goes over the line in the lead of the race. What can Christian Pittard do this time? It's not so much into turn 1 he goes for the move. It's then on the run towards Druids. He seems to get a better exit out of turn 1, but no, this time it's John Cutmore. He buys himself a bit more breathing room by the time they get to the heavy braking area up at Druids. Up Halewood Hill they went, but there's a lot more traffic that they now need to deal with over the coming laps, and all of a sudden, like you say, yeah, Tim Ralph and Jeremy Adams, they've closed in. We've got 1 minute and 30 to decide what the podium's going to look like.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't know. 2 cars fighting for the lead, 2 cars fighting for third and fourth. We don't know who's going to end up on what step of the podium at the moment, but it is still number 98, John Cutmore, that leads the way from Christian Pittard. They'll be heading on to their penultimate lap of the race this time through. How's the squabble getting on between the yellow car of Jeremy Adams and the blue car of Tim Ralph? Well, at the moment, it is going the way of the car of Tim Ralph that's still ahead of Jeremy Adams. I was looking for where they were on the screen at this stage. So our race leader, John Cutmore, just 0.6 of a second is all he has between himself and Christian Pittard in this combined Gold Arts Magnificent Sevens and Viren Builders Open section of the race. John Cutmore and Christian Pittard both run in the Viren Builders Open Series race. Tim Ralph, who's fighting away with Jeremy Adams, well, that is an Open Series car against, in reality, Jeremy Adams, who is leading the Gold Arts Magnificent Sevens section of the race.
Yes, absolutely. So we'll see as to exactly how that's going to play out. So with only 1 more lap remaining, they'll be going on to that final lap in just a few moments' time. John Cutmore is coming towards the line, still with Christian Pittard giving chase. The run towards turn 1 tends to be rather sedate for Christian Pittard. It's just by the time they end up going back up the hill, that's where Christian really starts to attack, but he washes wide of the curb once again, and that's going to compromise his run all the way up the hill. So John Cutmore may have just done enough up until this point to allow Christian Pittard to remain in second place, but now Christian Pittard draws himself alongside on the run down the hill towards Graham Hill Bend, but he can't quite keep the nose in on the brakes. This is the very final lap, and we've still got no idea what the podium's going to look like. Tim Ralph and Jeremy Adams have still got a lap to go for third.
Here comes Christian Pittard, another little look up the inside, but it's not going to work as they come in towards Surtees and up towards McLaren. It might be a typical sort of Caterham-esque race that it's the run to the line that decides who's going to gain the win. John Cutmore on the throttle as quickly as he possibly can. Christian Pittard runs out a little bit wide. John Cutmore still with traffic to deal with on the run to the line, and as they come over the start-finish line, John Cutmore will win the Gold Arts Magnificent Sevens and Viren Builders combined race by just under 0.2 of a second, 0.191 of a second between himself and Christian Pittard. And what about the squabble for third place? Well, they're just coming down through Graham Hill Bend for the final time. It looks as though it is still just going to be the car of Tim Ralph that is ahead of the yellow machine in the hands of Jeremy Adams. So Tim Ralph, his transponder's been troublesome all race, hasn't it? Showing him in 5th at the moment, but he's, no, in theory, in 3rd place, isn't he? Until the TSL timers correct that. So he comes over the start-finish line any second now, and is still going to be shadowed by number 3, who will be the winner of the Gold Arts Magnificent Sevens section of the race, which is Jeremy Adams. So what a brilliant race it was from all of those. We've still got 1 further race to come up before the lunch break, which of course will include our demonstration runs from the Jaguar XJR9s that we have on display, 2 of those, and a Jaguar XJR11. So 2 cars that would have raced at Le Mans for the factory in 1988, one of which was the overall winning car from that one. And we do thank the Jaguar Heritage Trust and also Jeff Page Racing for bringing those cars for us to see over the course of the lunch break with the demo runs and the grid walk that we'll have as well. Let's just confirm the results for you then for the race that we have just seen as the cars head down on their slowing down lap. John Cotmore claims the win from Christian Pittard by less than 0.2 of a second, with Tim Ralph in third, and Jeremy Adams was there in fourth. Stephen Collins and Richard Carter complete the top six. Then it was William Redman in seventh place. Motorsport photographer John Bryant finished in eighth place ahead of Trevor Harbour and Charlie Morgan, who wrap up the top 10. Nigel Liddell finished in 11th place, and 12th place was a pairing of Martin Dolan and Gary Boone. Next up, it was Stephen Spicer and James Randall, followed by then Simon Parker and Neil McConaughey, and the last of the finishers was James Melody. Problems for Martin Ledbetter, problems for Tim Davis and Colin Watson at the very start of the race. Luke Zuro also had his issues as well up at Druids, which brought about that early safety car. So the cars are making their way down in towards the pit lane area, and that's where we find Jack ready to chat to them.
We do indeed, in a very noisy pit lane area as well. John Cutmore is just taking his helmet off. Looks rather warm indeed, and I mean, how couldn't he after racing so hard with Christian Pittard? We'll make sure we'll grab a word with Christian as well. We've also got Tim Ralph, pardon me, just rolling his way down the pit lane. We'll try and grab a word with Tim. Here he comes. He's just trying to bring himself. Hopefully he catches us. Yes, he does. So we'll let John Cutmore jump out of his Spire RB7, and then we'll grab a word with him. John, understandably so, you look rather warm. That was very tense over the final couple of laps, wasn't it?
Well, that was certainly hard work. He's got a really big orange car. All in my mirrors, that's all I could see. Unbelievable. How I kept him behind, I don't know. Great.
And it just makes it worthwhile coming back and racing for the quality of racing you've just had with Christian Pittard. How are you ever going to wipe that smile off your face?
Well, he's definitely a first-class competitor, without a doubt. I mean, he had the legs in places, but I think it was quite even. So, good racing.
And the Spy is still running well, but obviously, any further development planned for that car, or are you just going to leave it as is?
As is. We had problems on Friday with the clutch, and touch wood, it's been a while weekend, so it's a great car.
Great stuff. We look forward to seeing it more. Congratulations, John. We'll wander over and we'll grab a quick word with Christian Pittard whilst he's here. Christian, we said you threw absolutely everything at that. You looked sort of left, right, and everywhere in between, but it just wasn't to be.
No, John positioned his car really nicely and avoiding any contact. It was clean. He had more grip coming out of clearways, so he always put a couple of car lengths coming down the straight, and then I was catching him. I felt faster, but it didn't matter. I couldn't get past. So I'm sure the data will say I took too long in the pits. I was conservative on the pit stop window, so I gave up the lead during the pit stop. So it was good fun, though. Thank John for making it an exciting race.
And that quality of racing, you can never get bored of that, can you?
No, totally agree. That was what it's all about. So I really enjoyed it. So thank you, John, for making it a fun afternoon. Much more fun than tootling around the front with no one to race with. So it was really brilliant. Thank you.
Brilliant. Congratulations, Christian. Great to grab a word. I can see the next cars are coming out, so we'll very quickly jump in with Tim Ralph. Tim, that more or less came out of nowhere because you were fighting for 5th, 4th, and then all of a sudden 3rd, and you just started to run away from there. That went quite well, no?
Yeah, I've absolutely no idea how that happened towards the end, to be honest. I was running out of fuel. So as I was coming into clearways, I was losing power. And I saw the guy in yellow behind me. He kept closing in. I'm thinking, I've got to try and bed my time to stay ahead of him and just try and get enough fuel to get across. But brilliant. First time out with the car. And really pleased with it. It's coming really well. So enjoyed it. Hot. I felt like the last 3 laps. Where's the flag? Come on, bring that flag out. My 40 minutes was flashing. It was like, well, it must be now. It must be now. And I've got Jonathan right up behind me. And between those two and losing fuel, it was quite exciting.
Amazing. It was brilliant to watch. Massive congratulations, Tim. I'd love to speak more, but we've got the next cars coming out, Mark. But Tim Ralph, clearly slightly tight up fuel towards the end. He was getting fuel surge.
Yep, brilliant stuff from him. Pleased to see the checkered flag, but we've got a green flag that'll be waving soon because we've got the Morgan Challenge heading out onto the circuit for the first of 2 races. Should be able to very quickly guide you through the grid for this one. They qualified yesterday and have 2 races today. It's Louis Ruff that starts on pole position alongside Andrew Thompson, and row 2 of the grid is John Emberson and Alexander Lees. Will Bibb, an addition to the programme, sits on row number 3 alongside regular Triumph racer and Mazda MX-5 racer number 661 Martin Adams. Philip St Clair Tisdale has Peter Cole for company on row number 4, and it's Jim Mountain and Tony Kilby on row 5. James Sumner and Craig Hamilton-Smith on the penultimate row of the grid, and Greg Parnell, who qualified out of